3-game losing streak comes to a close, and one that was far closer than they would have liked, but you'll take a win on the tail end of 3 in the loss column. The Birds flying high enough in this one. Jalen Hurts, 24 of 38, 301, but a costly pick 6 that flips some momentum in this game. Giveaways an issue for all of Philadelphia and will continue to be if things do not get cleaned up, but you'd rather learn within a win than within a loss. All right, let's dive in. Will Brinson joining the conversation alongside Emery Hunt. I'm your host, Joe Musso. Gentlemen, a merry to one and all. And what a game we got to enjoy here on the holiday, Emery. Just right off the bat, we were not expecting, even at halftime, for the second half and conclusion to look that way. You walk away from this one feeling what? That
Brian Daboll is a really good football coach. He has the pulse of this football team. This was a tale of two halves. You had the first half where the Giants just looked ineffective and out of sync and ready to go home. And then you had the second half where he makes a quarterback change, and now you have the comeback with Tyrod Taylor and this offense looking explosive, looking dynamic. And on the other side of the field, you have the Philadelphia Eagles finding a way to hold on, maintain, and get a win. This was a win that they needed to get because obviously they were on a losing streak, but also because you have to win kind of like this in the playoffs if you want to go far.
Yeah, and let's not forget that they're still trying to chase that #1 seed, right? Mm-hmm. And if you want to try and get that 1 seed, get that bye at home, you're going to need some help from the 49ers, or should we say from the Ravens here in the Christmas cocktail hour with the final game. But you've got to keep winning, and I think, man, this would have been a really bad loss for the Eagles. Mm-hmm. And I know that they were ahead for most of the game, and it felt like they were in control. I mean, the Giants had, these fleeting glimpses of opportunities to steal the game. Of course, there at the end with the interception thrown by Tyrod Taylor. He was a great spark for them. I think, yeah, I mean, like, it's a win they had to have. It's huge to get a win. It's tough to win in the NFL. It's tough to win in the division. But I still think that you could take what the Grinch himself, Pete Prisco, described the Eagles as and apply it here and say this team is still a little wobbly. They've got a great record. They're 10-4. They're going to win the division more than likely. They're going to be a factor in the NFC playoffs. But if you think that they're not at least a little concerned, like, you got to be concerned if you're an Eagles fan with this team's performance on both sides of the ball, particularly on defense, when you let Tyrod Taylor step in and mount this comeback.
Yes, certainly, and I'd like to pick at that a little bit more here as they do tack their 11th win. Will, when you look at Philadelphia, the talent is not the question. The execution and game plan at times, I think, can be pointed to as things that need to be solidified before we get to playoff football. What is your biggest question that remains with this team? Turnovers with the quarterback an issue, the defense, as you said, in this one. But if you were to pose one question you'd like an answer to over these next 2 weeks, what would that be?
I think the defense, Joe, because if this team, look, last year they were first in sacks, right? They had the most sacks since the Bears in either, I think, in 84, 85, and you would know that, obviously. But this is a team that now is like middle of the pack in terms of sacks. We're going to see, Hargrave later tonight for the 49ers, losing him, big deal there. They've certainly still got plenty of talent on defense, and these guys from Georgia, these young guys, we call them the bird dogs, right? I mean, this is a team with a ton of talent, but they just haven't been able to get the quarterbacks on their back lately. They struggle, of course, across the middle, and then on the back end, they just haven't gotten the same production that they got last year from those defensive backs. So I think when you start to talk about what can this team do in the playoffs? How far can they go? Can they make another Super Bowl run? For me, the biggest question is the defense, because the 49ers right now look unstoppable on offense and very good on defense. The Lions are going to be getting pieces back in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Aleem McNeil on the defensive side of the ball, and offensively they look stout as well. And then you got teams like they can't stop anybody right now, and that's a big old red flag for me.
Yeah, and to that point, 1 sack against a team that allowed 76 coming into this game. That's tied for 3rd most allowed by a team in NFL history with football yet to be played. Emery, same question to you here. What do you want answered from Philadelphia in these last 2 games? Obviously not big tests against Arizona and then New York again, but as this proves, they're all tests. What do you need answered?
I need to find out who's the ancillary or the other pass rusher opposite of Hassan Reddick, who can also bring the pressure on the opposite side, because right now, to Will's point, they're built solid in the middle. That's where all their strength is. But who's going to get that pressure on the edge outside of Hassan Reddick? And you get a test with an athletic quarterback in Kyler Murray next week, and you're probably going to get Tyrod Taylor again in Week 18. So who's going to help you bring the pressure? And on the back end, can guys play assignment sound football and not panic. That's where we're seeing the mishaps for the secondary. They're giving up big plays. They're not communicating on the back end, i.e. on the corners, and so they're giving up these chunk plays. Their linebacking core is where they're weaker in terms of versus the run and also in coverage. So they have a lot of holes. What we saw last year was the front four just live in the backfield of the opposing team, but this year we're not seeing that. They're not getting that sack production like Will talked about because there's no rusher opposite to help bring the pressure, because you're seeing teams slide toward Hassan Reddick and really close him off, and you don't see him a lot or often during a ball game. So that's where you want to see something over the next 2 weeks for Philadelphia.
We all sit here as products of the defense wins championships eras. Maybe defense gets you to championships these days, but you need a guy there to win it for you. Jalen Hurts, plenty of questions about his play, specifically in the turnover categories.
No Joe Flacco.
He tallies one here. No Joe Flacco. If anyone could spin it, well, you were extrapolating those numbers over a full season. It'd be the greatest season we've ever seen from anybody ever. As it pertains to this 60 minutes of football and Jalen Hurts, 24 of 38, 301, 1-1, and that one interception was a big one headed back the other way, Emery. Where are you at right now on Jalen Hurts? Obviously, he has the big game experience you want to try and come back, and this is a team coming off a Super Bowl loss. We don't even see this good from Super Bowl losers more times than not. What does Jalen Hurts need to do, not just in these next 2 weeks, but in his preparation for these games to ensure that if they are in that moment, he executes as the man we expect him to be?
He has to stay healthy, and we're starting to see a little bit of that glimpse of Jalen Hurts returning back to form when he was out there last year running around, and we saw that in this game, him being able to take off. They called some QB power to allow him to get out there and use his legs. That's where you want to see him continue to build, because for a good 6 weeks, 7 weeks, he was playing one-dimensional because he couldn't really run like he used to, and that opens up everything else. Now you have to defend him differently. You can't really play man. You got to sit back in a little bit of a zone and allow those guys to get open through those windows, and we start to see him hit Devonta Smith in stride on the crossing route or a slant route over the middle of the field versus zone coverage. So now that he's starting to get a little bit healthier, we're starting to see glimpses of the Jalen Hurts we saw last season, and that's going to have to be the case moving forward, because if he can't utilize his legs like he did today, then it's going to be a problem for this offense because it opens up so much.
Yeah, I think one of the underrated stories, too, about this Eagles team, we talk about the issues with the defense and then sort of the struggles on offense to a degree. If the Eagles lose this game, you got a bunch of angry tweets about Brian Johnson that are going to be flooding the old X out there. But I think what's notable is that, they've done a really good job overcoming it, but they lost both their coordinators from a Super Bowl team. And I think it showed up in terms of the defense not being as good as it was last year, and then the offense not having sort of the same pace and the same rhythm. Now, we're at the end of the season, so there's no real, there's no time to make excuses for losing your coordinators. But I do think that matters, and I will be curious to see how Jalen Hurts performs in terms of these final 2 games. You got to stay healthy. You keep doing the tush push. I know you feel like it's taking its toll on him, and he's gonna have to, like Emery said, be able to use his legs. Gonna have to step up, because that defense, for me, there's no real magical solution to solving that defense. So it's gonna come down to Hurts and this offense, and frankly, I don't know that I'd take them over my boy Jared Goff in Detroit right now, or even, dare I say, the original Beachbody, Matthew Stafford.
It's interesting, Will. In 2021, when Jalen Hurts was first working with Shane Steichen, the offense was kind of a little bit clunky until the back end of the season when they got together a little bit, got into the postseason against Tampa Bay, and they lost that game. Then we saw what happened last year with the full season. So we're seeing a lot of what we saw in 2021 with him first working with Steichen, and now he's working with Brian Johnson in a play calling capacity. Maybe that does have a significant effect, like you talked about, because we've seen this before happen with him in 2021.
I can only sit here and echo your original sentiments about Brian Daboll. I think the coaching job he did last year and the coaching job that he's done this year, 2 farly different tasks, but he's succeeded and excelled in each of those. Still 0-8 all-time against Philadelphia and the Cowboys as the head coach of the Giants. Those are those 2 big hurdles that you're going to need to jump over at some point if you're going to get this team where they desire to be. Will, I'm going to come to you here. We're in building block season for these teams that we have essentially scratched off mathematical elimination. What are those building blocks for the New York Giants? I mean, they just put out a great effort on the road, on a holiday, a lot of distractions, 2 different quarterbacks. What are you moving forward with in New York?
Well, I think, Joe, you can start with Brian Dable. I mean, he is a building block in terms of a coach, and there are a lot of Giants fans who were pretty upset with him after the Giants. I think this year, the way that they started out the season, they were probably a victim of their own success last year. I made the comparison with the 2017 Buffalo Bills, where Brian Dable, of course, hires the offensive coordinator. Sean McDermott sort of, the coaching gets them to this playoff berth, by the way, with Tyrod Taylor, no less. They do that. They draft Josh Allen. They take a step back. But then eventually you had enough around the quarterback where you're able to become a viable long-term contender. And I think that's the goal for these Giants. Kayvon Thibodeau playing some really good football this season, sort of taking a leap forward as maybe the best pass rusher in that class, which is extremely impressive considering what we've seen from Aiden Hutchinson. And, look, if you keep losing games, you're going to have a pretty nice building block in whatever quarterback you might be able to draft, because Daniel Jones really just one more year of fully guaranteed money. You'd like to see a lot more from the offensive line. Of course, Andrew Thomas there, but, Evan Neal, hadn't had the best of seasons. But remember, Thomas took a little while to get going as well. So I think really it's just sort of the improved stability and the ability to bounce back from a very bad start to this year.
Yeah, obviously it's Brian Dable, the key building block, right? He's the cement in this foundation. And quarterback aside, right, we know that's a big issue for them, but they need more explosiveness on the perimeter. They need another guy out there at wide receiver. They need another guy that can take some of the pressure off of, you have Wan'Dale Robinson. You have some guys that can create underneath, but you don't really have that bona fide number one. They need a big dog out there at wide receiver. Defensively, you like Wink Martindale. Hopefully he returns. We know there was some dissension allegedly between the two coaches, but hopefully he returns, because you see this defense showing up each and every week. But I feel like offensively speaking, that's where the Giants have to take the next step moving forward. Receiver, game breaker. You have one in the backfield in Saquon. You need one out wide, and you obviously need a quarterback. It would be great to see Jaden Daniels work with Brian Dable.
Hey, it's great to be a quarterback when you got two top targets, and such is my job here on CBS Sports HQ. Will Brinson, Emery Hunt, great work as always. More work to be done, and it's on the Pick Six podcast. Our guy Will, the whole crew, each and every week, each and every day, just about sitting down with the latest news and notes, the stories you need to know. Download, subscribe, and enjoy the premier podcast in the entire NFL. That's the Pick Six Pod. Oh, straight ahead on HQ, it's good on good, one-on-one, AFC, NFC, possibly a Super Bowl preview. We got your preview next on CBS Sports HQ.